Welcome back to Hardware Unboxed. Today, we're looking at the brand new Asus ROG Strix SCAR 2 GL504GV, a gaming laptop with a long product name, but some of the latest hardware inside, including the new NVIDIA GeForce RTX 2060. I've already posted an in-depth benchmark review of the RTX 2060, so check that out if you haven't yet, because today, we're more focusing on what this overall gaming laptop package provides. Like a lot of refreshed RTX laptops, there hasn't been a significant change to the design or most of the internal hardware. Previously, I reviewed the 15-inch SCAR 2 and it either came with the GTX 1060 or GTX 1070, while now you'll either get an RTX 2060 or RTX 2070, albeit at slightly different price points. My review unit is the GL504GV here, so we're seeing the RTX 2060 model and it's priced at $1,800 or 2,700 Aussie. Other hardware is largely unchanged compared to the previous model. We're still looking at Intel's 6-core Core i7-8750H CPU for most models, 16GB of DDR4 memory, and a 15.6-inch 1080p 144Hz IPS display. The primary storage options have been bumped up a tier across the board, so previously where you received a 128GB SSD in the entry model, you're now up to 256GB and so on. My laptop, and the main option available on Newegg and Amazon, comes with a 512GB PCIe SSD. In terms of design, what we're looking at here is the same as the previous SCAR 2 model, which I guess makes sense because both have the same name. Aside from the brushed aluminium lid, most of the laptop uses a plastic construction with a soft touch coating applied around the keyboard. This soft touch area has a carbon fiber design, with half of it getting a camo print. I'd probably prefer if the camo wasn't there, but Asus loves to do that sort of thing. Yes, there's RGB here too. You get a strip along the front edge of the laptop, plus the off-center Asus ROG logo on the lid, both controllable through Asus's Aura software. The front RGB strip is directly linked to the 4-zone RGB keyboard backlighting. You don't get per key RGB here, but the basic 4-zone effect is nice enough. The keyboard itself has a bit of a spongy tactile response. I'd personally prefer something more clicky, but travel distance is decent for this sort of laptop. Plus you get a numpad and none of the keys are truncated to fit it in. The trackpad is great, and I love the inclusion of the 2 separate click buttons. Like a lot of gaming laptops these days, you're also getting a slim bezel around the 15-inch display, which keeps the laptop's footprint quite compact, although there's still a sizable bezel below the screen. Unfortunately, Asus has gone with probably the worst webcam placement possible, offset and low below the display. I think a slightly thicker top bezel with the camera above the screen would work better. That sort of design has been used previously with MSI's laptops. This chassis is your typical mid-tier option. It's not a slim and light system like the Asus Zephyrus, but it's not a chunky beast like some of the big boy Asus models. It clocks in at 26mm thick and 2.4kg heavy, so it's somewhat portable, but not quite in that super portable tier that comes at a higher price. The main limitation for portability will mostly be the smaller 62Wh battery versus near 100Wh units you can get with systems like the Aero 15. I/O is very solid though, 3 USB 3.1 Type A ports, 2 of those are Gen 1, 1 of those is Gen 2, plus a USB 3.2 Gen 2 Type C port. There's no Thunderbolt 3 here unfortunately. You also get HDMI 2.0B, that's full-sized, mini DisplayPort 1.2, Ethernet, an SD card slot, and a 3.5mm audio jack. Internal connectivity comes in the form of an Intel 802.11ac 2x2 Wi-Fi plus Bluetooth 5.0 combo solution. Before talking about performance here, there's a few notes to be made. The first is relating to Asus's software suite, which is called the Armoury Crate. There's a lot of standard stuff in here, but the important thing are the fan profiles. Windows, silent, balanced, and turbo, plus a manual mode. For game testing, I used the balanced mode because I didn't spot any difference in performance between it and the turbo mode. For productivity apps, I did use the turbo mode though. It's louder, but does increase the power limit on the CPU, which for long workloads like video encoding led to a small performance increase. However, while the turbo mode is nice, what's not nice is getting just a single 16GB DIMM of DDR4 2666 memory. This means the laptop in its standard 16GB configuration is running in just a single channel mode, which leads to much lower memory bandwidth than dual channel laptops and therefore lower performance. It does leave a DIMM slot free if you want to upgrade to 32GB down the line, but that's come at the cost of performance for buyers out of the box. I'm not going to go into detail on the performance of the Core i7-8750H because I've covered it plenty of times in other reviews. It's a very popular 6-core CPU used in most gaming laptops, and it's the option I'd choose for productivity and gaming workloads without getting into those crazy large form factors. The Asus GL504GV performs roughly on par with the typical Core i7-8750H laptop, but that's down to a few notable differences that both favor and disadvantage the system. Due to the turbo fan mode, longer workloads tend to throttle less than standard 8750H performance, so we're seeing up to a 10% advantage for longer multi-thread workloads like Handbrake. This laptop can sustain higher clocks for longer. On the flip side, due to having single channel memory, this laptop gets disadvantaged in our memory heavy benchmarks. So that includes 7-zip compression, MATLAB, and Adobe Photoshop's Iris Blur. It evens out to being about equal to other laptops, but depending on what you're doing, you'll either see better or worse performance, so a bit of a strange one. As usual, here's our comparison between the Core i7-8750H and the last gen quad-core Core i7-7700HQ. Due to higher clock speeds and more cores, we're looking at over a 50% advantage in some multi-threaded workloads, as well as higher single-thread performance. You won't see this sort of improvement in every workload, but if you're coming from an older quad-core system, the 8750H will be a notable upgrade. This is the chart for those wondering whether they should buy a larger 15-inch gaming system or a portable 13-inch Ultrabook for their productivity tasks. Generally, the 8750H absolutely smokes a 15-watt CPU like the Core i7-8565U, delivering more than double the performance in some cases. Throw in proper GPU acceleration and for something like Premiere encodes, a gaming laptop is an order of magnitude faster. When it comes to gaming, I already have a full video breaking down how the RTX 2060 performs in this exact system. So if you want to see individual game performance across a handful of titles, plus an in-depth look at this new laptop GPU from NVIDIA, that video is what you'll want to check out. However, for that RTX 2060 review, I loaded up the GL504GV with dual channel memory. As it comes in the box, you only get 16GB of single channel memory, which has a noticeable performance impact in most games. So the performance you see in my RTX 2060 laptop coverage is better than what this laptop delivers out of the box. On average, the single channel configuration of this GPU is 13% slower than the dual channel config. That's a significant difference simply from not having that second stick of memory in there. Some games are barely impacted, such as Dirt 4, Watch Dogs 2, and Wolfenstein 2. Others like Prey, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and Resident Evil 2 see a 25% performance cut or more as the limited memory bandwidth chokes these games. There's no doubt that dual channel memory is significantly better for gaming at 1080p. In terms of an actual FPS impact, in a game like Hitman 2, we're talking about going from a 70 FPS average down to 50 FPS with single channel memory. In Assassin's Creed Odyssey, a 60 FPS experience is cut down to just 45 FPS. It's not a good performance loss. This also impacts the margins between this RTX 2060 laptop and other GPUs. Comparing dual channel to dual channel, the RTX 2060 is about 28% faster on average than a GTX 1060 6GB. But this single channel RTX 2060 laptop compared to a dual channel GTX 1060 system is only 12% faster and is actually slower in some games. And then compared to something with the GTX 1070 inside, again with dual channel RAM, it loses by more than 20%. Leaving that second DIMM slot free is a really costly trade-off to make it easy for buyers to upgrade their RAM in the future. I have to wonder how many people actually open up their system and chuck in that extra stick. Surely the number isn't high enough to justify cutting performance for most owners. What I'd have liked to see is the laptop come with two 8GB sticks by default. That would lead to much better performance from the RTX 2060. And for the small percentage of people that want to upgrade to 32GB in the future, they can swap out both 8GB sticks, sell them or something, and swap in a 2x16GB kit. It's not as good for upgraders, but I'd take that trade-off for better out-of-the-box performance every day. If you are thinking of buying the GL504GV and want to solve this problem, you're looking at spending $100 or so for a second 16GB DDR4 2666 SODIMM stick. Not a huge cost, but something you might want to factor in. Looking at the cooling solution, nothing much has changed since the last SCAR 2 models. Using the balanced fan mode for gaming, which delivered the performance you've seen so far, the cooler is pretty loud under load, pushing up near 48 dBA in our testing. It also tends to ramp up and down a fair bit while you're gaming, so sometimes the cooler is quieter than this figure, but to be honest, the frequent changes are just as annoying as running at the maximum 48 dBA all the time. However, temperatures are very good, which indicates the balance mode is perhaps ramping the fan up too high. I recorded a mere 73 degrees on the GPU and 83 degrees on the CPU in an extended Watch Dogs 2 session, which is well below other laptops with similar noise outputs. I reckon some manual fan tuning would go a long way to balancing out temperatures and noise here. For storage in my review unit, there's a Kingston M.2 PCIe NVMe SSD with a 512GB capacity. This is a mid-tier performer, not as fast as some of the Samsung or Intel SSDs I've seen used in other gaming laptops, but still fast enough to deliver a performance advantage over basic SATA SSDs. Internally, there's also a free 2.5-inch drive bay if you want to add in a further hard drive or SSD, but unfortunately there isn't an additional M.2 drive spot. The display used on this laptop is good. It's not going to break any new ground, and you've probably seen something like this in other systems, but it is a decent 15.6-inch 1080p IPS with a 144Hz refresh rate. Peak brightness is up around 300 nits, which is acceptable for a gaming laptop, and it has a contrast ratio of around 1000 to 1. In terms of color performance, this is an sRGB display, so no fancy wide gamut here, not that you really need that for gaming. My main concern here is the incorrect white point. Asus is using approximately 7500K rather than the correct 6500K, which gives the display a colder, bluer tone. This leads to average delta E's between 3.0 and 4.0, which isn't accurate, but isn't hugely inaccurate either. And again, it's a gaming laptop, so I don't think this is really a significant issue. So that's all the data I have on the Asus ROG Strix SCAR 2 GL504GV. Honestly, it's a perfectly fine laptop. It's got a good design with a good trackpad, a good keyboard and good I/O. It's got a good display, it has good upgradability, it has good internal hardware and good performance. I wouldn't say anything is particularly special. It's just your run-of-the-mill mid-tier gaming laptop that's designed to be accessible for all and deliver a decent 1080p gaming experience. For the most part, I think that's what buyers will get with the RTX 2060 version of this system. It's not overly portable, it's not overly chunky, it just nicely fits into that value but not crappy laptop category. My only major concern with the GL504GV is coming with single channel memory out of the box. It doesn't impact productivity workloads too much, but it does shave around 10% off the gaming performance you'd normally get from a dual channel system. It is fixable. A $100 stick of memory added into the second slot immediately gives you that performance back, but I'd rather that performance was included by default. However, while there aren't too many glaring issues with this laptop itself, the real downside is the price. At $1,800 US for this model, it's very hard to recommend when you look at the performance you're getting. It's a lot more expensive than GTX 1060 laptops with a similar CPU, display, storage, and other components, which retail for around $1,100 or so these days. So for 63% more cash, you're getting a system that's only 12% faster or 28% faster if you add in a second stick of RAM. It's also not competitive with GTX 1070 laptops. In fact, the predecessor to this very system, the GL504GS, is only $1,500 right now. So that's 17% cheaper for a laptop that's faster, sometimes considerably so. Of course, laptop prices change a lot over the months after launch, so those watching this review in the future will be faced with a completely different situation. It's likely that GTX 1070 laptops won't be available anymore, and who knows where this system will be priced among its competitors. Right now, it carries the exact same price tag as other RTX 2060 laptops, and without testing the others, it's really hard to know which is the best choice, other than to say that this one we've tested here is perfectly fine. As it stands today, to recommend the RTX 2060 SCAR 2, it'd have to be priced at $1,300 to $1,400, which is a fairly hefty price cut on where it currently sits. I definitely wouldn't be happy paying $1,800 knowing that as far back as the second half of last year, I could have spent $1,800 on a faster GTX 1070 system well before RTX laptops were on the horizon and Pascal went on a fire sale. I just don't like the idea of a new product being worse value than something last gen. So the absolute maximum I could justify for this laptop is probably around $1,500 in a world where Pascal laptops are no longer available. After you factor in an extra $100 to get dual channel memory, that would make it 11% cheaper than a last gen GTX 1070 laptop for about 11% less performance. So a stalemate, but a better position than today's pricing. I'm honestly not sure who is responsible for this pricing. Normally I would say Asus because they made the laptop, but every other RTX 2060 system on Newegg is around this price as well. It doesn't seem that anyone is able to make a laptop with the same specs or roughly the same specs for around that $1,500 mark. Is that Nvidia's fault for selling the 2060 to OEMs at too high a price? Will prices come down? It's pretty hard to say. All I know is that it's not good value right now, and that kind of sucks. That's it for this review of the GL504GV. I really wish I didn't have to end this review on a bad note because technically the laptop is quite decent. I guess there's no bad products, just bad prices. You can subscribe for more laptop reviews. I've got 2 more gaming laptops here waiting to be tested with RTX graphics inside. Consider supporting us on Patreon to get access to our Discord community. I'll catch you in the next one.